Chapter 32, April 10th, 2201, Moonbase Executive Hotel. Cadet First Class Richardson woke up to a view of the Moonbase terminal and the planes in the distance. The Earth was just rising, and again Cooper stopped to stare in awe. He couldn't get over the reality of his situation, but he was trying. He got some civilian clothes from his bag and went to the bathroom to change before heading to the kitchen area. Ryder was already there making breakfast. He was flipping pancakes the same way he did on the Challenger on the trip over from Earth. "Good morning. I hope you slept well, Cadet First Class," Ryder said as he caught another pancake in the air and flipped it onto Cooper's plate. "Eat, please, enjoy. I thought after breakfast we could head over to the Moonbase Museum. I have something there to show you that I think you will find quite interesting. Then I made a reservation at one of the top restaurants on the space to celebrate your graduation. Don't worry, the government is picking up the tab for my recent work." "You make me laugh, Ryder," Cooper said as he dug into the pancakes. He tried his best to slow down a little bit, but in basic he had become accustomed to eating as fast as he could before they yelled at him to get out and give the seat up for the next recruit. Now he tried to actually taste what he was eating. He looked out the window and could see another ship arriving at the base. Changing the subject, Cooper asked, "Where are those ships coming from?" "Well," Ryder said between bites, "after the decision from all the governments to pursue space exploration as the only logical next step, many smaller countries, even some of the bigger corporations, got into the space race. We now have at least 10 independent corporations with 8 different countries with their own space fleet. They are all governed by the UGMSC." "But isn't that organization mostly an American unit? Why would other countries and corporations abide by the rules?" Cooper asked. "Well, originally the United States was the main country supplying the troops, but remember that the UGMSC works for the World Space Congress. It is the military force behind the rules put in place by the Congress. But yes, there are challenges in trying to police an entire universe, especially when there are many small, independent ships that don't have an alliance to a country and are working out there trying to make a living in space. Remember, though, that the solar system is vast. From asteroids to all the smaller moons on the planets, there is a lot still to explore. With the heavy production in Earth orbit and around the moon to build spaceships that can travel beyond the stars, there is always someone willing to buy the materials. Even the Earth sends most of its raw materials to space." "Wow, I had no idea about that. We aren't informed of this down on Earth." "Well, I can tell you this now that you no longer live there. Much of the what you see on the Earth terminal is censored." "Censored?" questioned Cooper, dropping his fork. "What do you mean? Are you saying that they were keeping information from us?" "Well, I probably shouldn't have used that word, as it's a very charged word when it comes to terminal access. But what it means is that Earthlings do not receive all the news that we get out here in outer space. In the same respect, here in space, we don't get all the news that you get from Earth," Ryder explained. "But why?" Cooper continued questioning Ryder, not understanding. It's complicated. The universe is not the safest place right now. After the riots, there were still many people who were upset. The human population has changed. The way we live out here in space is a lot different than on Earth. There are some people like me, like Alwine's dad, who cross between both worlds. But for the most part, few Earthlings ever leave Earth. Humans are almost becoming two different races, as multiple generations of families are born here in space and never leave, like your friend Childs. His whole family was born on the moon, and they don't consider themselves Earthlings anymore. They call themselves Loonians. One of my roles is to keep the relationships between worlds calm. However, we are reaching a time in history when the battles will be waged between the rights of humans on different worlds. There are even some families who will never leave Earth, no matter what. They have a different feeling about Earth than others do." Wow, I never knew about any of this, but I guess I wasn't interested in all of the politics. I was just focused on freelancing and survival. That I didn't know there was so much going on outside of Earth, Cooper said, looking out into space through the bay window in their room. They cleaned up the dishes from breakfast, and Cooper went to his room to finish getting ready. He was definitely up for an adventure after having spent so much time stuck in the Wolfpack training. Ryder promised a surprise, and Cooper was excited. Although he grew up so fast in the past few months, he was still just a 15-year-old boy. They left the room and galloped their way towards some pathways similar to what they had in New Denver, but they seemed to move faster, probably due to the low gravity and less concern for getting hurt if you fell. As they rode the pathways, Ryder continued telling Cooper more about the world. Have you ever heard of pirates? Ryder said. Sure, Ryder. We read about them in school in history class. No, I mean space pirates. What is that? Well, again, this is something you probably haven't heard much about. It isn't something that is shared publicly, but one of the reasons why the cadet training programs exist is to train security personnel. I am sure that you had recruits in your unit who just barely passed the classes, whose strengths were on the soldiering skills, like using weapons, marching, that type of thing. Sure, yes, Cooper said, thinking of Chi and a few others who struggled with the equipment repair and electrical components, but could grab any weapon and hit the bullseye on the first shot. Even though the cadet problem brings out the best in people like you, the main focus is to create a military force. You see, space is like a big open ocean, and some wish to profit from it, but don't always want to do the work. Take, for example, the Raiders. Cooper nodded, bringing back bad memories. There are people who have taken to space to do the same thing, attacking anything from tourist ships to supply vessels, even military transports. Just last week, the USS Challenger, the one that we flew on, was boarded and all of the supplies taken. The space pirates are growing more aggressive as they look for more targets to attack. Cooper looked at Ryder in horror. Don't worry, our pilot Merkel is okay. Luckily, they are not destroying the ships they attack, just stealing the cargo. As a result, the military is stepping up its security measures. I haven't heard anything about this, either when in training or when I was on Earth, Cooper said. Like I said, the World Congress is trying its best to keep this information as quiet as possible to avoid panic, Ryder said as they got off the pathway and approached their destination. Ah, now is the time to talk about something else. Look, we've arrived at the Moon Base Museum. This is the biggest museum in the universe covering the history of space travel and exploration. There is an exhibit here that you must see. Ryder and Cooper entered through the sliding glass doors and approached the front counter. Hi, my name is Kristen. Would you like to buy tickets? The young blonde woman behind the counter asked. Ryder pulled out his ID and showed it to the woman. Major Ryder, sure. Sir, of course, you are free to enter with your guests at no charge. Thank you for your service to the worlds. The woman said, all this while bowing her head slightly. Ryder returned the bow of his head and said, Thank you, ma'am. She then turned to Cooper and said, Sir, even though you are a guest, I have to put your name down in the records. What is it? Cooper was struggling to get the words out. He was terrible when it came to talking to beautiful women, and Kristen was no exception. She couldn't have been more than a couple years older than him, and she looked directly at him with those beautiful green eyes. Yes, my name is Cooper Richardson. Interesting name, Kristen responded. You wouldn't happen to be related to Sarah Richardson, the astronaut, would you? Yeah, she was my mother, Cooper said, looking down at the floor and kicking the tile a little with his shoe. Then he felt a small hand on his arm. Oh my, Kristen said. I am so sorry. She was an amazing woman. She was one of my idols. There is more information on her in the museum. This is amazing. I sort of feel like I'm standing with a celebrity. Cooper looked up and Kristen was beaming at him. He felt like his skin going hot, and he knew his face was probably turning red at this point. Well, Kristen, Ryder interrupted, we will go ahead in now, if that's okay. Of course, Kristen said, as she pressed the button the doors to the museum opened. It was great meeting you, Cooper Richardson. You too, Cooper said, looking into her eyes for just a moment before Ryder nudged him toward the open doors. Once they were inside, Ryder laughed a little. Well, Cooper, I can see you have some trouble talking to beautiful girls. Was it that obvious? I have a friend in New Denver, Greg, who kept telling me to go to the community area and to talk to girls. He said my freelancing stories would be a hit, but I always avoided going because I just couldn't get the words out, Cooper said, finally starting to recover from the embarrassment. Well, I guess this will be something you will have to get better at over time, because there will be women in your advanced training. Now, let's check out the museum, Ryder said, patting Cooper on the shoulder. Ryder took out a small tablet and handed it to Cooper. Here is a map of the museum for you to follow. We are headed first to the Interstellar Travel exhibit. I was present when they opened this exhibit just a few years ago. Your father was invited to join, but he declined. They entered the hall for the exhibit, and Cooper had to stop for a moment. Up above the 3-story hall was a miniature replica of the USS Voyager, the only ship to make the interstellar trip to Sperrier. That is a replica of the ship that your mom and dad worked on. Without their leadership and hard work, the ship never would have successfully started the journey that will become the future for mankind, Ryder said, looking up. Now, come this way. I want you to see the Heroes Wall. One wall was covered with pictures of famous astronauts through the years, including, of course, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and more. As Cooper got closer, his eyes were drawn to the picture of his mom, Sarah Richardson. The digital frame dissolved between a set of 4 pictures of her, one showing her in full astronaut suit outside working on the ship, the next of her receiving an award of some sort. The next showed her holding a baby, Cooper, with his father at a military ball, and finally the last picture showed her at the launch of the USS Voyager. She was a thin woman with eyes like his, but she was muscular. Her face in the pictures showed strong determination, a never-give-up attitude, and a love of adventure. Tears came to Cooper's eyes as he thought about how different his life would have been had she not been lost in the space debris storm. Ryder moved closer to Cooper and put his arm around him. Son, don't cry, but instead celebrate the success of your mother. She was truly a hero to us, and especially to the Equal Rights in Space Act. There was a set of tablets on a table below the wall, and Cooper clicked on one tablet to reveal small thumbnails of all the heroes on the wall. He clicked on his mother's face, and the history and bio for Sarah appeared. He learned that she attended the Space Cadet training as well. She was assigned to Tiger Unit, and it looked like she graduated with honors. She won the Leadership Award just like him. In training and permanent duty, she fixed many emergency problems, including single-handedly repairing one passenger ship from crashing into the surface of the moon, saving more than 100 people aboard. The awards and honors seemed countless as he scrolled through the list. The story ended with the one his dad told him about the saving the USS Voyager. His dad wasn't mentioned in the story or the decision for her to go outside and do the repair, but both he and his dad were mentioned in the obituary with another name, Captain Trevor Ryder. With this, Cooper looked up to Ryder. I see you now know my secret. My name is Trevor Ryder, and Sarah was my daughter. Her maiden name was Ryder. Ryder said with tears in his eyes, But, that would make you my grandfather, Cooper said with tears still in his eyes. Yes, young Cooper, I am your grandfather. I know you probably wish that I'd told you this when we were in New Denver, but I didn't want to influence your decision to possibly leave your father and come to space. Your father and I hadn't talked for more than 10 years. Mitch always blamed himself for the death of your mother. While I have since forgiven him for sending her out to space that day, at the time I blamed him as well. I lost my only daughter that day. In addition, my life is not what you might think. I declined many promotions so that I might stay in space and travel where I'm needed. I was afraid that if I told you who I was, you wouldn't be willing to go to cadet school. You would want to stay with me, and that just isn't possible with the work I do. So I decided then that I would wait until you completed basic to tell you the truth. Your father was a good man and always treated Sarah well. I didn't want them to go to Sperrier because it was a one-way trip, and I couldn't go with them. My work at the time was too important to put aside. This caused a lot of friction in the family, and then when Sarah died on the ship, let's just say I had a lot of anger toward your father for a long time. I did not wish for his death, though, and I was deeply saddened when he wasn't able to make it off-planet with us. I wanted both of you to come with me so we could be a family once more. But alas, I underestimated the strength and cunning of the raiders in Denver. For that I am truly sorry to you and your father. Ryder cast his eyes down at this, and Cooper could see he was holding back tears. They stood there in silence for a few minutes. Cooper wasn't sure what else to say. His whole life was turned upside down in the past few months, and nothing seemed to surprise him anymore. It made sense, though, as his dad recognized Ryder right away when they met at the library apartment, and there seemed to be a history between them. I still don't understand why my dad left the space program when Mom died, Cooper said. 13 years ago, the space program was in a tenuous position. The mission of the U.S. Voyager was a media frenzy. Even Earth was given most of the information. There were a few channels that were broadcasting live when your mother went out into space to repair the ship. Even though there usually was a 10-second delay in broadcasts to ensure everyone's safety, her death was broadcast around the world and throughout the solar system. This sent a huge political wave through the World Space Congress. There were many calling to abandon the trip as too risky, fearful after one of the best astronauts in the world died even before the ship left. Your picture was prominently displayed in many of these broadcasts as the boy who lost his mother. Your father decided to take full responsibility for the incident. Even though he was never recognized as a hero like your mother, his decision to take responsibility protected the space program and took the heat off them. The Voyager mission was given the green light then, and the rest is history. Your father was heartbroken, and even though it wasn't his fault, after saying it was so many times on the news, he began to believe it was true. He was afraid to give orders again, afraid to send others on dangerous missions. He decided to retire and move to the surface to raise you away from the public eye. It was about this time that the government started to covertly censor more and more news content to the Earth. They needed to keep Earthlings passive, keep them from worrying about problems that arose in space. Out here, Ryder gestured all around him, space is a dangerous place. Like the Old West, we haven't yet conquered all of the universe. If Earthlings knew about every injury or death that occurred, they would revolt and force everyone to live in their tombs beneath the surface. Yes, I understand this, Ryder. I mean, grandfather, Cooper said, correcting himself. Cooper, you can call me Grandpa. I like the sound of that, Ryder said with a smile on his face. It quickly faded, and he said, we must never forget all that your parents sacrificed for you to be here, but you must also remember that they both knew the dangers and the risks going in. Just working in space is a dangerous undertaking, as I'm sure you saw from your fellow recruits in training. I heard about what happened to Recruit Chi and also to Samuels. You handled all of these situations with strength and courage beyond your years, and I'm proud to call you my grandson. Ryder put his arms out and gave Cooper a huge bear hug. I love you, Cooper. I love you too, Grandpa, Cooper responded in kind. At that moment, Cooper realized that he really did love this man, his grandfather. Ryder told him so much he never knew, opening his eyes to everything around him and preparing him for the future better than anyone. He was ready for the next adventure. The two spent the day together exploring the different exhibits. In the Apollo missions exhibit, Cooper showed Ryder where he went on his final training mission, how he rappelled down the crater, and where he brought Chi up to safety with everyone's help. Ryder listened carefully, beaming with pride. You have met and exceeded my wildest expectations. They ended the day going to the Sperrier exhibit. There wasn't much there yet, as the information about the new planet was still trickling in from the 4 light-years distance, but there were some beautiful pictures of the world. It wasn't nearly as bright as Earth, and there was much less water, but it appeared to have mountains and plains, and many of the different features that were also on Earth. There was something about the pictures that made Cooper felt drawn to them, solidifying his feeling of destiny to someday stand on its surface. The planet is a little bit smaller than Earth, so the gravity isn't as high there, maybe 5/6 of the gravity on Earth. The planet is almost completely unexplored. There was an area in the exhibit dedicated to the USS Voyager mission and a small excerpt about those who lost along the way. Sarah was listed among some others. There was also a list of major contributors to the project, and Mitch was on the list along with hundreds of other names. Currently, the display said that the USS Voyager was orbiting Sperrier, searching for the best location to make its final descent and establish the first permanent colony. The goal was to have the Voyager group get everything ready for the arrival of the USS Mayflower, when humans would start establishing cities. Ryder, Cooper said, looking over the display, how is it going with the Voyager group? Is there anything I'm not seeing here? Now you're starting to understand propaganda, Cooper, Ryder said, slapping Cooper on the back. You see, it wasn't the easiest flight. Remember, this group has been together on the ship for more than 10 years. Suspended animation was still a new invention when we left, so they couldn't go under for more than a couple of months at a time. This gave them short breaks from each other. However, the group spent most of the years awake and together in cramped quarters. In addition, there were many technical problems along the way, and without your mother there to solve every problem and your dad to manage it, the trip was challenging. They started with a crew of 20, and the last report said they were down to 14. They lost members for various reasons, and there were some infighting. despite the predicted personality models for each member. The further they traveled, the harder it was to maintain contact with them. So the reports we are getting are now more than 4 years old, meaning we don't know what they are doing at any given moment. Plus, the military has to review all information first before it can be released to the public, so the information in this museum is over 5 years old. The most recent reports, which I see with my security clearance, indicate that Sperrier is more challenging than we anticipated. The Voyager's probes to the surface indicate the weather is different from Earth's and unpredictable at times. We are learning more about the alien life as well. Older data indicated the wildlife was safe, but a report that just came across my desk yesterday said there could be some hostile animals that might pose a problem in the future when we land on humans on the surface. This information is not shown here because most of this display, Ryder gestured around the room, is designed as a travel brochure to excite more people to want to go to Sperrier. To be successful in populating Sperrier as a future Earth, we need to be sending at least 3 ships a year to start building a population. Displays like this and what you see on the terminal are only going to share the good things about the New World and the reasons to go, not the bad things. Most of the media understand this and try to limit the stories that might discourage travel. I know you chose to take a duty assignment on the Mayflower, so I don't want to scare you, but going to Sperrier is like going topside. You never know what obstacles you are going to face. I know that you are up for the challenge because I saw what you could do topside, but you must stay focused when you're on Sperrier because there will be dangers around every rock, things we never even imagined. This is an untamed world, a world that hasn't seen humans before. There will obviously be predators, and my guess is that they won't be happy to see humans. Plus, we have no idea yet if there are beings on Sperrier who are sentient. For now, we haven't heard of any, but they could be lying low, waiting to see what we will do. And finally, don't forget the 10-year journey to the planet. There are many factors involved in flying civilians. Voyager had military personnel trained to handle the situation and deal with different personalities. Civilians add a whole new element to the mix. Cooper was quiet for a moment, contemplating all that Ryder told him. The information didn't frighten him. On the contrary, it made him more excited. He loved adventures, the surprise of the unknown, and the adrenaline rush. What he was feeling reminded him of his first trip topside. Exploration was in his blood, and as Ryder told him once, it was his destiny. There was so much he wanted to ask, but he knew that the time was running short before dinner, so he decided to ask one question before pressing on him the most. When will the Voyager crew land on the surface? They are probably getting tired of orbiting for so long, Cooper said. Well, since this is a 4-year delay on communications, they probably already landed. We just have no idea what they actually did. The decision to land on the surface was left to the Voyager crew, since it would be a 4-year wait to give them the order. The original plan was to orbit the planet for at least a year or more to scout out the best place to land before proceeding. Remember, they are alone out there. When they left, the Mayflower construction hadn't begun yet, so the Voyager crew knew it would be more than a decade or more before they saw anyone else. Once they land on the surface, they do not have the fuel to get back to orbit. It is a one-way trip. The commander is a conservative leader. He probably waited as long as he could before making the final descent. When do you think they landed? Cooper asked again, really wanting to know. Ryder thought about it for a moment, stared at one of the exhibits, then said, they probably waited at least a year and a half to land, so that means we probably won't receive any communications for a long time if they actually made it. The Mayflower will likely leave on its journey without us even knowing the results of the landing. Wow, that's crazy to think about, Cooper said. We probably should go back to the room and get ready for dinner. Tomorrow, you will leave to go to advanced training, and it's time for me to take on another mission. But I've sincerely enjoyed spending my time with you, Cooper, my grandson, Ryder said, putting his arm around Cooper and directing him toward the exit. They made it back to the room and got changed for dinner. Both of them put on their dress uniforms. Ryder decked out in his rows and rows of medals, and Cooper in his new cadet first class uniform. When Cooper looked up at his grandpa, he thought maybe there were a few more medals on him since the last time he saw him. Cooper was proud of his medals as well. As Cooper looked at Ryder's medals carefully, he noticed Ryder had a leadership award as well. Did you go to basic training as well? Cooper asked, pointing at the leadership award. Well, basic training was back then was still on Earth and was a much different experience than you faced. Back then, they gave out leadership's award to the top 2 recruits in each platoon. At that time, I was surprised when they called me to stage. I was a bit of a disciplinary problem, and I spent a lot of time in the dirt doing push-ups. But the drill sergeant saw something in my leadership potential, even though most times I was leading other recruits into trouble. However, he saw me rally others to win the competitions against other platoons. He also recognized my special abilities to solve the hardest of problems. I wish I were still as strong and tough as I was back then. I couldn't stop. I never stopped. Now my age has begun to slow me down a bit. Enough about me, though. Let's go to dinner. I heard that this restaurant is amazing, Ryder said, opening the door and holding it for Cooper. Chapter 33, April 11th, 2201, Crater's Executive Restaurant. Welcome to the Crater's Executive Restaurant, the maitre d' said as he showed Ryder and Cooper to their window seats. I hope you enjoy the amazing view. They sat down in their seats and noticed they were off to the edge of the Armstrong Moon Base terminal. It was funny because the view was almost the same from their hotel room. The host handed them tablet menus and then left. How do you get such amazing accommodations and dining? Cooper asked, looking around the place, which seemed to be filled with the richest people in the world, judging by the way they were dressed. Cooper, a lot of people in this world owe me for things I have done. Sometimes when I need to, I call in those favors. This is one such occasion. Dinner with my grandson in the best restaurant the moon has to offer. He lifted his glass of sparkling apple juice, and together they clinked glasses and took sips. Cooper looked through the menu and was amazed by all of the choices. There was every kind of animal you could imagine, from beef to chicken to ham to a variety of seafood choices. How do they have so many choices? How is it fresh? Do they get these from Earth? Cooper had so many questions. Cooper, just like the Earth, this planet has a vast complex of underground farming. Even fish farms as well, for those who don't like animals with legs, Ryder said. Leaning in, he added, I've heard that Craters has its own private farm to ensure the food is the freshest and the best. What are you thinking of having? Cooper didn't know what to choose, but finally decided on a juicy steak, which would bring back some memories of the farmer and his father in New Denver. Ryder decided on a grilled salmon. While they waited, Ryder pointed out some of the ships that were currently in the terminal. See that one, he said? That is one of the supply ships for the Mayflower. It supplies everything from food to equipment. The one over there you might recognize. It's the same model as the Challenger we arrived on. It is probably a supply ship for one of the other Earth space stations. They continued talking as they ate dinner. Cooper couldn't believe the meal. The flavors and texture were like nothing he had eaten before. He could certainly get used to eating this way forever. Ryder gave him a taste of his salmon. Cooper never tasted fish before because it wasn't something that was generally served in New Denver. It had a unique texture. The seasoning was good, but he was glad he ordered the steak. When they finished dinner, they each ordered a dessert. Cooper couldn't believe he still had room to eat another bite, but the chocolate lava cake was incredible. As they were finishing up, Cooper leaned back for a minute. He was about to take a sip of his water when the whole building shook and someone dropped a tray of glasses, shattering them on the floor. Cooper looked to Ryder, but he wasn't there. He was already on his feet with his gun out, looking through the windows. Cooper looked out as well, and that was when he saw the chaos. The ship that was bound for the Mayflower was currently on fire with a huge hole in its side. Ryder was on his cell phone, using the sight on his gun to assess the damage. He looked at Cooper and mouthed the words, "We have to go." He handed a note to the host and then exited through a back door while people around him were quickly streaming through the front. Cooper, I want you to go back to the room. I have to go downstairs to deal with this situation, Ryder commanded. No, Grandpa. I want to go as well. Maybe I can be of help, Cooper said, trying to show the authority of his new first-class rank. I have to pull rank on you this time, Cooper. This is a volatile situation right now, and I'm not in charge of it. I will assess it and be back in the room in a little bit. Your new commanding officer would have a real problem with me bringing you down there. How am I going to learn anything about the world if you keep me isolated? That ship was bound for my final assignment. I need to know what happened. Please, Cooper pleaded again. Ryder hesitated, but decided it wasn't worth the fight. Okay, but stay close and don't get into any trouble. Many times these terrorists set secondary bombs to go off after the emergency crews arrive. Terrorists? Cooper asked. He heard the word before, but not since history class. There used to be a lot of terrorism in the world, but after the world was attacked by so much famine and other natural disasters, most of the races and religions came together to survive. I will explain more later, Cooper, but for now, we must go quickly. Ryder led the way. They walked quickly down a back hallway. A few people were passing them, running the other way. They made their way to a door near the end of the hallway, and Ryder used a special ID to gain access. They were in an elevator headed down. When the elevator opened, 2 armed guards met them with guns drawn. When they saw Major Ryder, they immediately stood at attention. Ryder saluted them back and walked briskly past them and toward the entrance to the terminal. When the administrator saw Ryder, he looked relieved. Major Ryder, it's good to see you here at Armstrong. We have a situation. I see that, Rigel. We were at the Craters restaurant eating when the bomb exploded. Has the bomb squad taken a look to make sure there are no secondary devices? Yes, I do believe they have finished their initial assessment, and it looks like there was only one bomb, Administrator Rigel said. You can check in with Sergeant White over there, and again, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you, Rigel. I see White. I will go to him. Ryder motioned for Cooper to follow him, and they went over to Sergeant White, who was giving orders to a team of privates. As he finished his orders, they went through the terminal door and spread out. White saw Ryder and saluted him. Ryder saluted back and asked for a status report. Sir, it is good to see you. I wish it weren't in these circumstances, though. I have 2 civilians dead and 3 more injured. My team took an initial assessment of the terminal, and it appears there was only one bomb. From the video, White opened up a tablet and began scrolling through what looked like a video showing the ship before and after the explosion. It looks like the bomb was on a timer and was probably placed in the cargo supply area of the ship. As you know, all supplies that come through the terminal go through a lengthy process to ensure their safety, so we are not sure how it happened. Good, White. It looks like you have some information so far. Do we have any idea who would have done this? Ryder asked, taking the tablet and reviewing the video himself. Well, sir, there have been rumors floating about recently that the EOA was planning some attacks. The Guard is following up with some leads right now, and we should have some suspects to interrogate soon. Okay, it looks like you have the situation under control. I would like to take a look at the ship, and I want to bring my grandson Cooper with me, Ryder said. Sir, as I said, we have only completed an initial assessment. There is still a chance of a secondary bomb. Are you sure you want to put yourself and your grandson in danger? If you wait until my team comes back, it would be safer, White suggested. No, Sergeant. We will go now. I trust your team did a thorough search the first time, Ryder said, complimenting White. Thank you, sir. Take these IDs to show the guard at the door so they know you have permission to enter the crime scene. We close down the entire terminal until we are able to ensure everyone's safety. Ryder took the IDs and handed one to Cooper, then saluted Sergeant White, and they moved on. After showing the IDs, they entered the terminal. Cooper remembered when he first arrived here last January, when his whole life completely changed since then. The terminal looked mostly the same, except for the fact that now there was only security personnel present instead of the crowded terminal. It appears as if the terminal was mostly intact, and the damage was restricted to the ship headed to Sperrier and the surrounding area. They approached carefully, and Ryder assessed the damage. This ship will be out of commission for months, maybe even permanently. The bomber knew what he was doing, making sure the device was placed on this side of the ship so that all of the main electrical systems would be destroyed. He probably hoped for the whole fuel system to ignite, but luckily it appears that the fail-safes held, or else this whole terminal might have gone up in flames. Ryder spoke softly to Cooper as they continued walking around the ship. Cooper also looked carefully at the damage. He learned a little bit about explosives in basic training, mostly about the different types of designs. They learned how to use grenades and other simple devices like flash bombs. He also learned about C4 and its abilities to be molded into any shape. He asked, Grandpa, do you think they could have used C4? It would be pretty easy to mold it into a shape that resembled something they were supplying to the Mayflower. Ryder looked at Cooper with surprise. Cooper, I don't know how you figured that out, but that is correct. Based on the pattern of the explosion, that is exactly what was used to blow up the supply ship. The only hard part would be how they got the detonator into the C4 and then set it off. There was probably a co-conspirator who set the detonator after the C4 was already in place. It would be easier to sneak the detonator in by itself hidden in another piece of equipment. There wasn't much else to see at the site, so Ryder and Cooper went back through the terminal entrance and found White. White again saluted, and Ryder responded before they spoke. White: we believe after examining the ship that it was a C4 charge that was detonated. Is it possible for you to find the manifest as to what was on the ship? Also, someone must have set the detonator as well, so you could pull up everyone who had access to the ship since it landed. Thank you, sir, White said. We are gathering this information right now. We have all the employees in separate rooms for interrogation. I'm afraid, though, that one of the temporary crewmen already left on another ship bound for Earth. Who was that, White? And when did that ship leave? Ryder asked intently. To comply, White handed over the tablet that showed the page with the person's face on it, as well as a short bio. Ryder scanned through the information. Is there a way to get contact with the ship and turn it around? Ryder asked, looking White in the eyes. Sir, I have men trying to accomplish this now. As yet, they have been unable to reach this vessel. It was a small, independent ship. We have its general direction, but not much else at this time. Okay, White. It is going to be a long night. This sounds like our best lead, especially since this ship launched less than an hour before the explosion. It would be at a distance close enough to set off a remote detonator, but far enough away to avoid being caught in the explosion. And if their plan worked properly, the whole terminal might have been disabled, rather than just the supply ship. Is it possible for you to get a security ship to go after them? We are working on this as well, nodded White, but the independent ship seems to be moving at a high rate of speed. They would probably be tough to catch. Well, see what you can do. In the meantime, we should probably interrogate everyone else just in case someone was helping them here on the ground, indicated Ryder. Then turning to Cooper, he said, Cooper, I am sorry, but now I have to get to business for a few hours. I am trained in interrogation, and if someone is lying, I should be able to pull the truth out of him or her. This will take time, and you are supposed to leave for advanced training tomorrow. Please go back to the room, and I promise to see you before I go. Cooper understood and felt privileged that Ryder let him come this far. He agreed and headed back to the room. Before he got to the exit door, he looked back, but Ryder was already gone from the room to fix things. It was clear that resolving situations was what he did best.